So when in doubt, there are times I get a question and it's just too close to call when it comes to those answers. So I follow the following rule, and that is I play Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Yeah, remember that game show? One of the things that kind of drove me crazy is, they had phone a friend. By the way, no, that you can't phone me during your exam. I'd like to phone Dale, please. One of the methods that they could use was, besides phoning a friend and audience participation, was the 50-50. And I hated the 50-50 when I saw contestants do that, because I would be sitting there going, it's either A or it's C. And when they did the 50-50, they always left A and C as the answers. I'm like, man, that didn't do me any good. So it's the same concept, is that you can play the 50-50 rule and go through and eliminate the things that you know are not true. In the previous example, we saw red hat. Hey, I know that's not true. I just narrowed it down to 3 different answers. Hey, I know what a black hat is. Maybe I'm not familiar enough with what a gray hat was. So I can narrow it down to at least 2 choices. Then I kick in my famous Sherlock Holmes method, which is eliminate all that is false, the red hat hacker, and anything else that's left over, no matter how strange or bizarre, it has to be true. Just make sure that you can justify. And that's actually how I study for my exams, is I'm studying sample questions. Again, I make sure I understand every single answer, because trust me, knowing what a black hat, even though black hat may not be the answer to this particular question, because of the fact that I've studied a black hat, when it comes up as a legitimate answer, I know what it is. So let's take an example, or look at an example. Here are my answers again. I've got a worm, a virus, rootkit, a Trojan horse. Everybody know what every single one of those does. Now, you may be familiar with some of these. Some of you might struggle with actually what is a rootkit and how it works. But I want to go through and remind myself what each one of these does. A worm and a virus are very close in what they do. A worm, similar to a virus, can actually go through and replicate or copy itself and cause the same type of damage, versus a virus, which requires the spreading of an infected file. Worms themselves are standalone software and don't require a host program or human intervention to propagate. Typically, worms enter a system through a vulnerability and take advantage of different file transports or information transport features on a system. A virus is kind of like it is a type of malware that actually propagates itself by inserting a copy of itself into and becoming part of another program. It can then start to spread from one computer to another, leaving infections everywhere it goes. Now, almost all viruses are actually attached to an executable file, which means that the virus itself may exist in the system, but it may not be active until somebody, like a user or a service, actually opens or runs that malicious program. Now, a rootkit is a collection of software. Typically, it's malicious software that's actually designed to enable access to a computer or a system, or areas of its software that isn't otherwise allowed. Rootkits can actually be installed automatically, or an attacker can install one after they've obtained access or administrative level access to a system. It's one of the first things we do to hide our cool tools. And then we have, of course, a Trojan horse. A Trojan horse is another piece of malware, but what it is, it's actually a disguise of a legitimate piece of software. Software that you may download from a torrent site. Trojans can actually be employed by attackers to try to gain access to your system. Users are typically tricked by, installing the said piece of software, and that particular executable immediately gives the cyber criminal the ability to get into your system and steal your data. Now, you may be saying, Dale, it sounds a lot like a virus or worm, but Trojans are not able to self-replicate. So, you got all these down, right? Now you understand what each one of these are. And this is actually how I do the exam. So then I go up and look at the question. Ooh, what is a self-replicating piece of malware? Well, we just said a Trojan horse does not replicate, right? And a rootkit is strictly there to hide our tools. So it's down to that 50-50, a worm or a virus. Do you remember which one we said was self-replicating? So if you remember, they were both really similar, except for a virus required human interaction. So the answer here would be a worm. So hopefully this will actually help you out. Matter of fact, this particular method right here has actually bailed me out many times in the aspect of a lot of times I had no idea what the answer was. And so just through the process of doing 50-50, eliminate all that which is false, and again, whatever is left over has got to be the answer, and just making sure I understand each one. In fact, I will actually go back and try to justify myself why the Trojan horse is wrong, why rootkit is wrong, why a virus is wrong. If anything, this helps to solidify the information better.